Many political observers in this province thought that hydro rates could turn into the ballot box question. So far, it hasn't quite turned out like that. Instead, Hydro One, the province's electricity transmission and distribution provider, has been in the crosshairs. Here to explain why, the Toronto Star's Ontario politics columnist Martin Regg and Allison Smith, founder and publisher of the online news service Queen's Park Today. And it's good to have you two in those chairs back here at TVO for a very, very confusing conversation. And I'll tell you why. I mean, this thing was percolating, you know, the $6 million man and all that stuff before the campaign got underway. But now it's really turned into a thing. And let's just read this, shall we, Control Room? You want to bring this up? Here's from the Ontario Clean Air Alliance, a press release they put out last month. Doug Ford thinks firing the CEO of Hydro One will lead to lower electricity bills. While we agree that $6 million a year is way over the top, firing him would only lead to a 0.03% decrease in our rates. This kind of populist thinking has led successive Ontario governments to ignore real solutions to rising electricity costs. Okay, Martin, start us off. The government of Ontario's budget is $150 billion, give or take, every year. And one of the big issues in this campaign has been a guy making $6 million. How come?
It's a lot of money. It's too much money. I'm not going to argue anything except that it's scandalously high. The guy who runs OPG, Ontario Power Generation, makes $1.5 million a year plus or minus, and out of complete recklessness, I have defended that as the only salary that I thought, high salary that I thought was actually justifiable because he keeps our nuclear power plants safe and running. But $6 million, the guy who used to run Hydro One, we're going to explain the difference, I hope, later between Hydro One, OPG, all these things, because everybody mixes it up.
Well, you know, one generates power and one transmits it. That's pretty simple.
Simple to you and me, perhaps, but before I had to do this job a few years ago, I mixed it all up all the time. People think it's Ontario Hydro, and it's not. It's Hydro One is transmission lines, it's wires and poles. And the guy who used to run it before the government privatized half of it earned about $1 million a year. The guy at OPG, $1.6 or $7 million a year. Now, the new president, CEO, is earning $6 million, and that's just way too much.
Okay, but having said that, you know, this is an election campaign where we are talking about how to spend $60 billion in healthcare money. We are debating how to spend $26 billion of education money. Actually, no, we're not. We're wondering why a guy's making $6 million a year, which, if you look at all the numbers in the budget, is a pretty small number. So how did this explode into such a thing?
I mean, I think we can hand that to Doug Ford, right? He's made it into his tagline and what he repeats out on the campaign trail multiple times a day. For Ford, it obviously is playing well to his supporters. I'm sure the PC's internal polling is saying that it's playing well to the voters, so he's going to keep hammering that home. I mean, they weren't handed, or Hydro One's board was not doing themselves any favors when we found out, news broke earlier this week, that they had all given themselves $25,000 raises. And it's notable to say that the executive, the CEO of Hydro One, was also paid $1.7 million more last year than the year before. So this isn't like a long-running thing that, you know, hasn't been changing. It's very active, these pay hikes. There
was a motion put before the Ontario legislature before they dissolved Parliament and we're off into the election campaign. I think it was the opposition leader, Vic Fideli, put this motion forward, calling for the resignation of the Hydro One board, the reversal of the increase in the CEO severance package, and the motion failed because the Liberals voted it down. The NDP supported, but the Liberals voted it down. Of course, they had a majority, so that was that. Bottom line, does it make economic sense to get rid of this CEO and this board?
No. As egregious as this salary is, your original point was right. It is a drop in the bucket. And the idea of throwing more money, good money, after bad money makes no sense at all. So yes, he earns over $6 million a year with his bonuses, plus or minus. But getting rid of him would require pressing the nuclear option, firing and nuking the entire board of directors. You get into severance, cascading severance payments that would be in the $10 million range. To your original point and the point of the Clean Energy Alliance, yes, the government's budget is about $150 billion a year. We spend about $20 billion a year generating electricity. So it really is not going to do anything except pacify people's rage, which I understand. I'm not minimizing that. But Doug Ford, let's be honest here, is pressing people's buttons here. So getting rid of the CEO of Hydro One, who by all accounts is actually doing a pretty good job, but for blowing up the brand in terms of his excess pay, but in terms of actually managing the company that everybody used to hate, that you used to love to hate when it was publicly run, getting rid of him will not actually make things better. Arguably, they could make things worse in various ways. And just to Allison's point about Doug Ford, what's interesting about this politically, because this is all about politics, and when we talk about salaries here, is that Doug Ford has basically stolen this issue from Andrea Horwath, because Horwath and the NDP opposed privatization from the beginning, as they should have, because they're the New Democratic Party. They believe in public ownership. And she has, to her credit, campaigned for years about excess salaries for hospital CEOs. We've talked about this on the show.
Yeah, and there is a cap on those.
And there's a cap on those, which the government brought in under her pressure. And Doug Ford walks along and is basically eating her lunch, out-populisming her by making this a central issue, despite the fact that the Tories wanted to privatize this for years and years and years.
Is that a real word? What did you say?
I don't think so. I can't, never to be repeated.
Outpopulizing her. Well, all right, since you've talked about the lunch that Doug Ford is eating of the NDPs, I want to talk about that lunch right now, because one of the things the New Democrats want to do as it relates to Hydro One, never mind capping the salary of the CEO, let's talk real big money here. They want to buy back all the shares that have been privatized so far. What is it about? About 53% of the company's been privatized so far? Okay, they want to do that. There's been lots of reporting done on whether this would be as inexpensive to do as the NDP purports in its plan. What can we say about that at this stage?
I think we can say that it was going to take a lot longer, I think, than the NDP says it will. They had originally said they would be able to do it in 8 years, I think.
And they would be, $400 million, I think.
Right. And then, of course, the price of the shares is always fluctuating. We don't know whether, if an NDP government is elected, what that's going to do to Hydro One shares. Will that raise them up because all of a sudden there's a government that's willing to buy them back at all costs? Or will it drop on maybe some risk that the government will expropriate them or something? I'm not saying the NDP haven't said they're going to do that, but we don't know what price they are willing to pay. But what Andrea Horwath is sort of saying, just to touch back to the CEOs, is that she will cut hydro rates and she will rein in Hydro One by purchasing the shares back, making it private again, and then capping salaries.
I mean, the point, I guess the government can't cap the salaries right now because the government's not the controlling shareholder anymore.
As they're becoming very well aware.
Right, indeed. All right. Now, your paper's done a lot of reporting on this as well. And Rob Ferguson, your colleague, has done some really good reporting on how much this would actually cost over a much longer period of time to buy back all those shares. What have they discovered?
So we've discovered, and it's no secret, that this is complete mythology. There is so much mythology about hydro rates. But in terms of the idea of buying back 53% of Hydro One, the poles and wires, not Ontario Hydro, would take about 20 years. So the plan is to take the dividends, which is about $250 million a year, and apply that to buy back what would cost about $6.7 billion. $250 million a year in dividends, year after year, to get to $6.7 billion.
It's a couple decades.
It's not going to happen in one mandate or two mandates. It's fiction. So the NDP boxed themselves in here. They found that campaigning against the sale of Hydro One, everyone thinks it's Ontario Hydro. That's why they're so mad. And by the way, I opposed this privatization, but I see what they're doing here. And so this idea that they need to buy it back was kind of a political requirement, because if it's so important, we can't let it stay in private hands. We have to buy it back. Well, because I'm an old-fashioned person, I oppose the privatization of Air Canada. But I don't hear anybody calling for the repurchase, renationalization of Air Canada.
So you admit you were really out of touch on that one. How about Petro-Canada? You want to buy those gas stations back too?
I didn't want to sell it, but I don't think we would ever buy it back. So too late.
Well, I think for the NDP and for Andrea Horwath, she speaks about Hydro One as Ontario's greatest public asset. Like, for her, it's this pinnacle of socialist Ontario that once was, where hydro was owned by the people. And I think she really sees it on an ideological level. I think you're right that she's boxed herself in. And to your point about using the dividends to purchase back the shares, it's also worth noting that that's another $200 million every year that is currently flowing into government coffers that won't be. So they're going to be losing money at the same time.
That's a fair point to make. So the $200 million dividend that comes in now that is spent on programs, if that $200 million goes back to buying shares, then they're going to have to raise money or go further into debt, right, in order to make up that $200 million currently going for programs. Okay, that's a lot to take in, but I think I got that. Let me, Allison, follow up on this, though. Andrea Horwath is drawing a straight line between we buy back the shares, we renationalize Hydro One, and your electricity bills will go down. Can you actually draw that straight a line?
I definitely don't think so. Electricity prices in Ontario were high before we privatized Hydro One. Hydro One was only privatized a couple years ago. Up until, for the 10 years leading up to that, prices were going up and up. So by buying back the shares, I really, and this is the Liberals' line on this, is that it's not going to make a penny worth of difference. So I don't think, and you know, the NDP have now promised that they're going to, using this by ending time of use pricing, they're going to somehow be able to bring hydro bills down another 30% from what they are now. And I just don't see that actually playing out the way that they think it will.
Okay, but let's just humor me for a second, because their argument is if you take the profit motive out of the whole Hydro One story, and there therefore is not the obligation for this company to charge higher prices, therefore make more money, that way you can lower electricity prices. That's the theory. Anything to that?
It's a great election campaign slogan, but it overlooks the simple fact that electricity prices in Ontario are regulated by the Ontario Energy Board. Just like natural gas prices are regulated by the OEB. So Enbridge and Consumers Gas can't just charge whatever they want as profit-making companies. Our natural gas is supplied by profit-making private companies. As much as I would have loved in my youth to see them nationalized as well, I don't lose sleep over the fact that they are privately held companies. And I don't lose sleep over the partial privatization of Hydro One, because I don't believe for a moment in my waking moments that that affects the price of electricity. I know it not to be true. And the idea that that profit somehow has accounted for the last 10 years of hydro increases that people are upset about obviously doesn't make sense. As Allison says, the increases predated the Hydro One privatization.
I don't know that anybody has ever actually done this study yet, but has anybody looked at the way Hydro One operated when it was 100% owned by the province of Ontario versus the way it is now, 53% owned by the private sector, and come to a firm conclusion that it is in fact a better run company right now? Anybody know that?
We've heard from customers, right? Customers have said that service is generally better, and I don't mean like whether or not your lights are on, but I mean interactions with the company.
Responsiveness to complaints and that type of thing.
I think we've definitely seen data on that people are a lot happier on that level. And as you said, it used to be the company everyone loved to hate.
It was the ombudsman, the former ombudsman, said it was the single biggest source of complaints to his office. Hydro One billing screw-ups. Hydro One says, I'm not a customer because I live in Toronto, that they have actually achieved better performance on billing screw-ups with new systems. So I haven't heard anyone in the NDP say that it's a worse run company now than before. So the obvious burden is on them to show that it's somehow poorly run. Their argument instead is that it's involved with prices, and we know that not to be true.
Conservation. Doug Ford says he will move the cost of conservation programs off hydro bills and onto the tax base, if you like socializing that kind of a program. Does anybody know if that actually saves any money on electricity costs at the end of the day? Allison?
I think the distinction between ratepayers and taxpayers is a foolish one.
Because we're all the same.
We're all the same. If you live in Ontario and you have turned your lights on before, you're a taxpayer and a ratepayer. So, I mean, obviously that changes with your income and things like that, but it's still, you know, the money comes from the same place ultimately. And by putting the moves that the government made recently along with the Fair Hydro plan, which controversial for sure, but I think that the moves that they made for low income people have been generally well received. I know there was slow pickup on some of it, but that's more of just an administrative issue than anything. I don't think that is something that helping low income people pay their hydro bill is something that we should end or necessarily even shift from the way it's working now.
Well, I know that certainly government backbenchers, when the Parliament was sitting, after the so-called Fair Hydro Plan was brought in, said this issue has disappeared as a political problem for me. People's electricity costs went down, the complaints about Hydro One were a lot less, and as a problem, it went away. I mean, mission accomplished in some respects, right?
It went away until it came back again with Doug Ford, who jumped on this issue of the $6 million man. It is a centerpiece of his campaign speeches. And so it has obscured the issue of what are the underlying challenges for our hydro system, which have bedeviled every party that has been in power. So this idea that Doug Ford promises that he's going to keep the 25% reduction that the Liberals brought in, which, as you say, there was so much noise and static a year ago. It has all been silenced until recently. He's going to keep that controversial plan, which they keep criticizing, and he's going to reduce hydro rates by a further, is it 12%?
12%,
I believe.
yeah.
I don't know how he's going to do that. What I especially don't know is how the NDP, which says it's going to scrub the 25% reductions, and because it's basically a remortgaging, it's borrowing money to give people a break today. They're going to eliminate that and instead give Ontarians a 30% reduction in hydro rates without a single significant detail other than removing time of use meters and so on.
And buying back the shares.
And buying back the shares magically with dividends for 20 years. I mean, it actually doesn't add up. There's a lot that's wrong with hydro in our province, but there's a lot of panaceas being sold as well.
Allison, you wanted to add?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree that Doug Ford definitely brought this back into the equation. And I think that we're talking about the $6 million man, and we're talking about buying back Hydro One shares because those are easy problems or easy to explain problems. Whereas the Fair Hydro Plan, which is costing the province $21 billion in interest, or it's a very expensive program that was convoluted by design. So the way that it's set up, I mean, I think the three of us could probably sit here for 45 minutes and probably not be able to explain the Fair Hydro Plan because it's very complicated. And because of that, the opposition parties or the leaders in this election campaign can't really go after it because nobody will know what they're talking about, which is why we have which is why we had the CEO and the board chair of Hydro One getting scrummed by reporters outside of their annual general meeting the other day, which I did never.
That's a first.
That was a first,
That's
right?
A first,
I was
sure.
not expecting that to happen this election campaign, and I don't think they were either. One of their lines was, "We're just hoping to get through this." This is not fun for them.
But when you talk about why this has worked so well for Doug Ford, anybody who lives in this province who's over, let's say, 50 years old, will remember Friday nights growing up when they were young and seeing Steve Austin, the astronaut barely alive, as the $6 million man. This line resonates and it's working for him. We got a few minutes left. Let me pick up on one more thing here, and that is the Green Party has come out, Martin, with an idea that rather than sink billions more into refurbishing Pickering, leave it alone, let it run its use, make a deal with Quebec, Hydro-Quebec, to transmit some of their hydroelectrically generated power there. We'd save a lot of money. It would be a lot greener. Your view?
Well, I'm from Quebec, so I like the idea of Quebec and Ontario doing a deal. We're part of the same country. They have a ton of hydro. We don't, by the way. That's why our hydro rates are higher. But it's not as simple as it sounds. And as much as people try to look at this obvious potential synergy, surplus, and a need for electricity, it has to be done at the right price. And it has to be done with long-term contracts, not short-term contracts.
And I presume you got to build a lot of transmission lines.
So that's the missing piece, is that you need to spend a couple of $1 billion at least, perhaps more, to upgrade the transmission line. So it's not as simple as flicking a switch in some imaginary grid. It would need a massive upgrade outside of the Ottawa area, which is could be close to capacity. Look, the Liberal government has, both Liberal governments in Quebec and Ontario, have been aware of this opportunity, and over the last several years, Philippe Couillard and Kathleen Wynne tried to do some deals where they did some swaps and found some potential for mutual savings.
Saw small stuff, though.
But it's at the margins. It's commendable. But the big, heavy stuff that would displace nuclear, which is our baseload power, which keeps Ontario essentially from being a low-carbon province in terms of electricity infrastructure, it might be a pipe dream.
What do you say, Allison?
I think we're so used to nuclear in Ontario that we don't even really think that we're outliers, but that we have 3 nuclear plants. But elsewhere in Canada, there's one in Quebec and one in New Brunswick, I believe. So we really are a lot more reliant on it than I think that we think about. The Ontario Clean Air Alliance are an anti-nuclear group, and maybe they do make some fair points with the refurbishment of Pickering and Darlington, because they're very, very expensive projects. I think $12.8 billion just for Darlington. But I think, and this is another thing we don't really talk about, but the nuclear industry and even the nuclear refurbishment industry is a huge job creator and job retainer
And it's
in Ontario.
It's a made in Ontario job creator.
So I mean, maybe that isn't exactly where we want our government to be spending all of its money, but a lot of people work on these projects. And as much as, yes, I agree that hydro from Quebec would be great if we can make that happen. Although now I'm thinking of the issue with Alberta and BC right now, who are having a interprovincial fight over whether or not Alberta will to build a pipeline. Alberta just passed a bill saying that they're not going to, or that basically allowing them to stop gasoline and other natural gases from being pumped into British Columbia. So, we could end up with that sort of problem at some point, who knows?
Two NDP governments as well. Isn't that incredible?
Fascinating.
Two NDP governments that can't stand each other. Go figure. Okay, that's our time. I think we've sort of covered a bit of the electricity landscape here. To be continued, as they say, with still almost 3 weeks to go until Election Day. Thanks to Allison Smith from Queen's Park Today and Martin Regg from the Toronto Star for gracing us in our studio here tonight at TVO. Thanks, you two.
Thanks, Steve.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.